Megalopolis. Let's look at the trailer.
One filmmaker has always been ahead of his time.
So, Megalopolis is finally here. It is written and directed and mostly funded by Francis Ford Coppola. It features a frankly huge cast of Adam Driver, Nathalie Emmanuel, Giancarlo Esposito, Aubrey Plaza, Shia LaBeouf, Jon Voight, Jason Schwartzman, Talia Shire, Lawrence Fishburne, Catherine Hunter, Dustin Hoffman. It's just unbelievable who's in this film, to be completely frank. And the plot is about genius artist Caesar Catalina seeks to leap the city of New Rome into a utopian, idealistic future, while his opposition, Mayor Franklin Cicero, remains committed to a regressive status quo, perpetuating greed, special interests, and partisan warfare. Torn between them is socialite Julia Cicero, the mayor's daughter, whose love for Caesar has divided her loyalties, forcing her to discover what she truly believes humanity deserves. So it's here, and it's a lot. As I mentioned before, this film is written and directed by Coppola, and I also mentioned basically partly funded because I believe he sold his vineyard to get this film funded. It cost about 120 million. But a bit on the backstory of this film is he initially wanted to make this after Bram Stoker's Dracula in the late 90s, but he, I guess, couldn't really get it off the ground, and he also claimed that he wanted technology to kind of catch up to the vision he had in that crazy head of his. And there's been a lot of talk about it over the years of, is this film ever actually going to get made? And then a couple of years ago, Adam Driver was attached to it, but it premiered at Cannes earlier this year, and it is finally here with all the weird reactions and the weird and pretty hilarious trailer featuring the bad reviews for this film. As a fan of Coppola's films, such as obviously The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, and being a film fan in general and a wannabe critic, I felt it my duty to go and watch this, and I don't know how to review this film. So I'm going to try to talk about the kind of setup, including the setting, and I guess the scenario of it all. You have this character of Caesar Catalina, played by Driver, with this rival Mayor Cicero, who's played by Giancarlo Esposito. They're in this place called New Rome, which is basically New York. This film is a bit of a play on the fall of Rome as this once great society that then crumbled. And the character of Caesar Catalina is the leader of this thing called the Design Authority. He's this genius, Nobel Prize winning great mind and artist. He tears down buildings and puts up beautiful structures in their place. And Esposito's character of Mayor Cicero is this very run-of-the-mill kind of mayor-like figure where he just wants to build casinos and kind of boost the economy and stuff like that. And then you've also got Jon Voight's character of Hamilton Crassus, who's the leader of this Crassus Bank, this hugely wealthy, like in the trillions wealthy type banker. And he kind of jumps between these two men in which one to support financially in their vision for this great city. And the kind of main hook of the plot is that Caesar has discovered this kind of new element, for lack of a better term, called a megalon, which is this naturally occurring but somewhat man-made thing, which kind of like morphs around things, can become part of something, can create things new. And his whole vision is to make a megalopolis completely made out of this megalon compound, where there are like automatic walkways for people, everyone will have a self-sustaining house, everyone has a beautiful garden, everything's kind of gold, and just very obvious images of utopia. And as you can see, I'm starting to ramble because I have to say, a lot of this film did feel like a bit of a slow descent into madness for me. And that's the reason why I'm struggling with really reviewing this. The TLDR is, it's definitely ambitious, but it's absolutely a lot of a mess. The ambition kind of rears its head in the form of like these very trippy dream sequency bits and just the images and the vistas. There's even some unique camera work going on, but the messiness of it is just in its actual story and the story it's trying to tell, and ultimately a message it's trying to send. Particularly in this message, there's a lot of Coppola referring to himself in this character of Caesar. The character of Caesar is a genius, and he's a genius because he's really creative. He makes things from his own mind. And that's the main difference between Caesar and the rest of the people in this film. They're very greedy, they just want wealth, they want power, but Caesar wants to create pure new things. And it's a very, very obvious nod to Caesar being Coppola himself, as artists are much better people than businessmen, I suppose, whichever way you want to take that. But the messaging here is extremely muddled. I had a conversation with my friend not long after watching this film last night where we were talking about the messaging of this film, and he raised a very good point, which I happen to agree with, where if this film was made when I guess it was supposed to be made back in the 90s, it probably would have had a fair bit to say, but also it's very flawed in what it decides to say. We've seen the notion of rich people bad, creative people good, hundreds of times now, and this is just kind of doing it again. But there is just kind of like another layer to it in this film of you're bad, I'm good, but somehow we can still be friends. And even Caesar, who is pushed as this kind of like good, smart protagonist for most of the film, he is responsible for the tearing down of buildings that people live in, and he never interacts with these people once in this film, and it's just bizarre. How is he meant to be this stoic genius giving back to the people if he doesn't engage with the people that he's first taking from in the first place? And it's all so extremely muddled that it actually became a bit exhausting for me after a while. Anyone that knows me knows that I hate intermissions in films. Back in Malta, they used to do intermissions in every film that you go and see. In the UK, they don't do that, and I much prefer it that way. This is a 2-hour and 20-minute film, and there was a point in it where I was just like, get me out. I need to walk. I need to breathe. And that ultimately comes down to a problem with the film of where it's not only incoherent, it's actually pretty boring as well. I could talk about the cast, and they're all extremely talented people. Driver is ridiculously committed to whatever Coppola's vision is of this character, so I can't fault him there. But the material just isn't that good. Particularly Shia LaBeouf's character is just a bit of a weird freak, and it's something LaBeouf has done before, but in this case it just doesn't really work at all. Aubrey Plaza's character of Wow Platinum is a particularly problematic one in this day and age as well, particularly with what ends up happening to her and what maybe that says about what Coppola thinks about women in the kind of media business. I don't know, but that in particular feels very old-fashioned, and the rest of the cast, they just feel like a bit of a waste. Like, you've got Jon Voight, who most of the time I was laughing at when I don't think I was supposed to. Nathalie Emmanuel is a bit all over the place with her accent. Sometimes it's really harsh New Yorker, sometimes it's just pretty standard American. Giancarlo Esposito is proving me right in the fact that I think he's a pretty overrated performer at this point. Like, don't get me wrong, he's pretty good, but he had all that kind of hype around him from Breaking Bad, and I haven't really seen anything that I would recommend since. Dustin Hoffman and Jason Schwartzman are essentially non-existent, aside from a few lines here and there. And the biggest waste of all is Lawrence Fishburne. Like, his character is the, I guess, assistant and chauffeur of Caesar. I don't even know his name. I don't know if it's mentioned, but his character is just kind of resigns to an odd line here and there, and he's got a lot of voiceover to do in the film. And just ultimately, I think this just all plays into what a big mess this film kind of is. And I'm not trying to join in the kind of hate train on this film. It got pretty middling to harsh reviews when it premiered at Cannes. It's gotten pretty bad reviews now as well. And I'm really trying to see this from the perspective of someone who loves film myself and find appreciation in this film. And I can appreciate some of the ambition, and I always say I love it when a director takes a swing, but sometimes they need to take a swing and they actually need to hit on certain things. And the only things that really hit in this film are some of the images and some of those dream sequency bits. But there are some hilariously bad segments in this film which I shouldn't be laughing at in a film which is taking itself so seriously and earnestly in trying to portray a message that just doesn't stick the landing in any way whatsoever. And I'm not going to say that I hate it in any way, but I really, really don't recommend it to basically anyone at this point. I guess the only person I could recommend it to is if you're looking for some kind of art as an experience rather than as any form of entertainment. You should probably go into this, and that brings up an interesting debate in and of itself of, do you have to go to a museum and be entertained? No, you go to a museum because you want to take in the artwork and you want to kind of see how that makes you feel. And why shouldn't it be the same for films? Well, because films have always been a form of entertainment, of going to a theater and sitting in a dark room for 2 or so hours and getting lost in a story. But when there is no story to get lost in, that becomes a problem for me, and that is exactly why I cannot recommend this film. Okay, so we did it. Megalopolis has come and gone. I managed to get myself to go and see it, and now, thankfully, I can forget all about it. As usual, I want to hear from everyone. If you have seen Megalopolis, tell me what you think. There's a lot of different discourse going around. Maybe you think totally differently to me, and you really enjoyed the film. Maybe you agree with me, but nonetheless, get involved in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Please share the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, all the YouTubey stuff. I will be coming with another review very shortly. I'm about to go and see The Substance later on this evening. I know that's one that released over a week ago, but I was back home for some family matters, so I didn't have a chance to get to go and see that, but I'll see that tonight. I'll make a review, maybe post it in a couple of days. Who knows? I unfortunately won't be on the Adult podcast again, regrettably, but I think Andrea's going to be hosting that one alone tomorrow night. That'll be at 8:30 p.m. in Malta or 7:30 p.m. in the UK. But yeah, it's been a fairly busy one on my end. Like Caesar in Megalopolis, I wish I could just stop time, but unfortunately I'm a mere mortal. So until the next time I see you, thank you for watching.